Thank you for inviting me and for allowing me the chance to address this August assembly. I am really honored to be among you this afternoon. I will try to abide by the timing you have given me. I have around 40 minutes to talk about the situation in Egypt. So I will divide my presentation into three parts. The first part, I will be talking about Egypt itself and what happened there during the past 3.5 years. The second part, I will talk about the major players from outside the Middle East and what their roles were since the launching of the Arab Spring. And the third part, I will dedicate it to Japan, the relations between Egypt and Japan proper. So if you allow me, I would like to begin by saying that Egypt has existed as a centralized country with a centralized government 4,939 years ago. That is almost 5,000 years, when King Mena unified the north and the south of Egypt into one kingdom. And this country has been governed from the center during all this time, and it has always maintained the same borders with the same neighbors. So despite the invasions that we witnessed from the northeast, from many, I would say, invaders from Anatolia and from in the old time, and then later on we were part of the Greek nation, and then the Romans, and then the Ottomans, and then Napoleon came with his campaign, and then the British occupied the country. So throughout all this time, all these long years, Egyptians have managed to maintain their identity, which is a mixture of all this. So Egyptians are Africans, they are Arabs, they are Mediterraneans, they are Christians and Muslims. They are an amalgamation of all this together. And this multi-layer of culture created a people that is moderate and tolerant by nature. Why am I mentioning this introduction in particular? It is because to say that many in the West and in Japan failed to understand what really happened in Egypt in the past year and a half or 2 years. Because the struggle that was taking place in Egypt was about the identity of the country. It was a struggle about maintaining Egyptians as they were, maintaining the Egypt that you know, the Egyptians that everybody knows, or shifting this and altering, I would say, the DNA of the people into something else. And this something else you can see in other countries surrounding Egypt, and you can reach conclusions by yourself what this something else would have meant. So we have always maintained excellent relations with all of our neighbors. The South is always known to provide Egypt with wealth. The waters of the Nile come from Africa. And we have always kept perfect relations with African nations for that particular reason. The geopolitical or geostrategic location of Egypt made it always a target for different invaders. Let us just mention Napoleon, who said that who controls Egypt controls the world. In fact, the French, they only stayed 3 years in Egypt after 400 years of Ottoman occupation, but the footprints or the results, I would say, of the French campaign against Egypt was profoundly felt in the Egyptian society. It was like a wake-up call to the 19th century. So on our northern eastern border, we have Israel, with whom we maintain a peace treaty We have kept it for 35 years as a cornerstone of the stability of the Middle East. The peace treaty has existed and has not been breached, not even once, during these 35 years, because both countries believe that this is an essential part of the stability of the region. However, Egypt is not neutral when it comes to Israel and Palestine. Egypt is pro-Palestine 100%. Egypt insists that there must be a two-state solution, that there must be a Palestinian state, that the injustice that we live today should end, and that this the solution of the two states should include the West Bank, Gaza, as a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as a capital. This is a very important element in the Egyptian diplomacy. Most of you have followed the mediation undertaken by Egypt during the Gaza conflict. Many said that Egypt is neutral and Egypt is not going to help the Palestinians, but this came out to be not true. We have done our best and we have achieved the truce, and we will continue later on the negotiations. We hope by the end of this month the Israelis and Palestinians will come back to Cairo to work further on a continuation of the truce and making it a lasting one, while respecting the demands by both sides. Now, let me just mention three things that have constituted the basis of the Egyptian diplomacy for many years. First is in 1974, right after the 1973 war, Egypt launched an initiative for a Middle East free of nuclear weapons. And 40 years later, we are still where we are. There is no good listeners to that call. The initiative is still there, and we are still calling for it. If the African continent succeeded in signing the Belindaba Treaty, which freed the continent from nuclear weapons, if there are other arrangements in Latin America and in Asia, so why not have the Middle East free of nuclear weapons? This is an initiative, very important one, and we continue to persist, and we will continue to work on that matter. Another initiative was launched in 1986. President Mubarak was addressing the European Council in Luxembourg, and he called for an international conference under the auspices of the United Nations to combat terrorism. This is very important. We were among the very first countries to call for an international conference whereby we would gather all the treaties that govern the anti-terrorism activities for now, which are, I think there are 15 or 16 treaties that deal with the hijacking of airplanes and the safety of maritime lines. And we were calling for all of these treaties, plus the combating of terrorism proper, be included in one global treaty where all the parties, all the nations of the world would be parties with the same rights and obligations. Just a reminder that at that time, we were told, 1986 and the years that followed, we were told, you Egyptians, you have a problem internally. You cannot deal with what you call terrorists, so you have to deal with it. And you don't transmit your problems to the international arena. But unfortunately, many of you heard Prime Minister Cameroon talking just early this week about measures to be taken in the direction of what we have been calling during the past 30 years. That the world should work together as one hand in combating terrorism, and no tolerance, zero tolerance when it comes to the destruction of our civilization. Another issue that I would like to mention was that after the 9/11 attacks on New York, there was many calls for dialogues, different dialogues. A dialogue among civilizations, a dialogue among religions, a dialogue among cultures. And we have been very positive about that. We have been calling, we have been saying that this was the real time for a dialogue among civilization. It was about time to understand each other and see how our young people develop in different ways, and it was difficult to control them, and then the dialogue between civilization was an essential part of avoiding a repetition of what we saw in 9/11. And again, the dialogue was started, but did not conclude any concrete results. As for the dialogue among religions, we have been calling for this and insisting, and we even hosted 2 or 3 conferences in Egypt, trying to bring together all the parties concerned, and yet nothing materialized. And I'm sure that had it materialized in anything, we wouldn't have seen what we are witnessing now in very dear parts of the Arab world. Now, if I may mention briefly what happened in Egypt during the past 3.5 years, I would say that I would refer at least to the year 2003, which was saw the occupation of Iraq by the United States and the coalition. And ever since, there was a wish to deal with the Arab world in a different way. Instead of colliding with the or confronting the I would say the Arab world, there was a decision that why don't we do it from the inside, from within? We can reach the same results. So, as you all follow the Middle East, you know that there was little by little the creation of a struggle between the Sunni and the Shia world, and then within the Sunni community, we had struggle between the institution like Al-Azhar and the Muslim Brothers and the Salafis. And then even within the Salafis, we had the Salafi that represent the state, like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. You have the Salafis of Al-Qaeda, and now you have the Salafis of Daesh. So what do I mean by all this? I mean that the West in general was not enthusiastic about the dialogue among civilization or among religions, and that the idea of crushing terrorism was not given the proper attention at the time when it needed it. And then parallel to all that, there is the persisting injustice in Palestine. And as long as this problem persists, the only people on earth that lives under military occupation until today, anyone under the age of 47 in Palestine was born under military occupation with no hope, with nothing to hope from him, nothing to expect from him, except joining these groups for any reason he would see. So this injustice must finish. It has to finish. It is essential if we are talking about stabilizing the Middle East. Now, the idea to support the so-called moderate Islamists and push them up to power in different countries, including mine, was based on 3 elements. The first is that if we push, by we I mean the West, of course, if we push and help these moderates, so-called moderates, to power, they will be friendly, and since they are traders and business people, they will be maintaining the open market economy, and they will be very good clients. And the third thing, which is a complete fiasco in my point of view, was that they will be able to control the fanatics and the jihadists and the takfiris and so on. So the basic assumption was that let's put these people, or let's help these people reach power, and then we will be able to have a better balanced Middle East. To come back to my first point, the failure of the Muslim brothers in Egypt was not because they were not only because they were unable to govern, they were not ready for it, and they were hungry for power, and they wanted to take everything for them. Not only this, but because they attempted to change the nature of the Egyptian people. As I said, the DNA, the very nature of Egyptians. They try to change this. It's as if somebody comes to Japan here, wins the election, and say, look, we are going to apply communism. Your style of life is not good. Let's change to something else. It's exactly what was supposed to happen in Egypt, and what the Egyptian people had to say, stop, it will not happen. Let me give you two examples. Maybe for over 5,000 years, Egyptians have been celebrating a feast at the beginning of spring, which usually comes 1 week after Easter. We call it Sham el-Nisim, where all Egyptians go to the parks, to the gardens, and we consume fish, and we color eggs, and we enjoy a family gathering. This has been going on since the time of the pharaohs. This is not something new. But all of a sudden, some of the leadership of the Muslim Brothers says it is a sin to celebrate this feast. It was not a Christian feast. It is not a Muslim speech. It is a strictly Egyptian celebration. And we were asked, okay, this is a sin. You don't have the right to celebrate that. So what happened on that year? That is, I'm talking about April of last year, 2013. That the number of people who went out to the parks to celebrate it was more than 10 times the usual number that go every year. This message by the people was not understood, thank God, by the Muslim brothers. They didn't understand. They didn't feel that, look, you cannot play with the identity of Egyptians. They will not accept it. They will not go for it. And the other example that I like to give, because it mainly concerns Japanese people, is that you all remember in 1997 there was a terrorist attack against the Hatshepsut temple, where 62 people were slaughtered, all tourists, including 10 Japanese. And you will not be surprised to hear that President Morsi appointed the accused number 7 in the attack against the Hatshepsut temple as governor of Luxor. So you can imagine how the Muslim brothers looked at tourism and as an industry, as an income-generating part of the economy. And as a result, the people of Luxor revolted. For 7 consecutive days, the new governor, was unable to reach his office, and finally he had to resign. These two events tell you about of course, among other things, but I would only like to restrict myself to these two events. They confirm that the struggle was about the personality, the identity, the nature of the Egyptian people, which, thank God, we managed to preserve. Now, the problem with the West in general, and I would say with the Western media, is that either they do not want to see things as they are in a practical way, or they have a plan. If we say they have a plan, it means that they wish to see Egypt like the other countries of the region. Very simple. Because Egypt has stabilized the country, Egypt has stabilized the economy, and we are progressing step by step. And Egypt is combating terrorism alone, without any help from anyone. So if this you don't like, I mean, some don't like it, then it means that they wish to see Egypt disintegrating like other countries in the region. It cannot be interpreted otherwise. The other solution is that one has to understand that the Egyptian people revolted and expressed themselves in a very open way, and that this is the fact. It's a fact of life. So you say that the president was democratically elected and so on and so forth. Okay, fine. But he misled the country. He cheated on us. He even is accused of taking some strictly confidential documents out to Al Jazeera channel. They were broadcast on Al Jazeera, and the source was the presidency of the republic. And this is one of the cases that are at the Egyptian courts now. So roughly, this is the situation. People that revolted to conserve their identity, and it is time for the powers to deal with this, I would say, event as is, not as if the wish is to see Egypt disintegrating and getting into a civil war. Because this is what was going to happen had it not been for the revolution of last June. Now, I would not like to talk too much about the history of colonial powers in our region, but it's important since everybody now is talking about the end of Sykes-Picot, and that we are now returning to the beginning of the 20th century. I would not like to talk about this because all I can say is that the colonial powers in the past, they have used a moral pretext that they were on a civilizing mission, coming to take the primitive people of this region in the Middle East and Africa from barbarism to civilization. That was the moral pretext that was used in the past. Maybe today the civilizing mission has been changed with other vocabulary, but this is not what I would wish to discuss today, because this is something that goes beyond Egypt anyway. It's a problem that will always persist and will always be discussed at many levels. Let me also mention the situation at our borders very briefly. First of all, Gaza. Many in the media were talking about Egypt and Israel opening the border crossings with Gaza. Well, this is confusing matters. Gaza is under Israeli occupation, and legally Israel is the responsible power to take care of Gaza until it becomes independent. But Egypt is just a neighbor of Israel and Gaza. We have nothing to do with the problem of occupation and people under occupation. This is not our problem. So the border crossing of Rafah, which has been mentioned 100 times in the media outlets, is a border between Palestine and Egypt. And the agreement that controls or deals with this, the modalities of operation of this border crossing, is an agreement signed in 2005 between the Palestinian Authority, the European Union, and Egypt. It has nothing to do with that. The European Union sent monitors to oversee the mechanics of the border crossing, and cameras are there for the Israelis to watch the situation. Now, when Hamas won the elections in 2006, they kicked out the monitors from the European Union, so the whole agreement was put on hold from the side of Gaza, from the side of Palestine. But for Egypt, this is a sovereign country. There is a gate, and it is like any other gate with Sudan or with Libya. It is a gate that should be respected by others. On the other hand, we have 6 border crossings between Israel and Gaza. Only 2 operate from every now and then, which is Eretz and Kerem Shalom, or Karam Salim, and the rest, they hardly open them. But this is, again, between the occupying power and the people under occupation. And Egypt has nothing to do with these borders. So when the Hamas people and the Israelis are negotiating about the border crossings in Cairo, they are not negotiating the Rafah border crossing, which is strictly an Egyptian border crossing. It is made for the travel of persons, not for goods, and it is used for emergency and humanitarian cases. So this is the position at the border itself. In the Sinai, we happen to have a group of terrorists called Ansar Baytul Maqdis, or the supporters of Jerusalem. And this group was founded by one of the leaders of the Muslim Brothers who no longer exist. His name is Muhammad Nasr. He is either, he has disappeared somewhere, or he is difficult to find. And this particular Ansar Baytul Maqdis, this organization is working against the Egyptian army, the Egyptian police, and from time to time they like to shoot missiles on Israel, hoping perhaps that this would create problems, border problems with Egypt. We have controlled most of the situation, and so far we have closed more than 1,700 tunnels linking Gaza to Egypt, thus bringing things to a legal status. And as I mentioned, we are facilitating the negotiations between the Israelis and Palestinians. As for Libya, which is a very important neighbor and which is witnessing very difficult time, we have to protect the borders alone, practically. The borders are 1,200 kilometers, and there is no one on the other side to help us control the border, so we have to do it alone. It is very difficult because it's all desert, but we are doing that as much as we can. The situation in the Sahara region, the Boko Haram in Nigeria, the Ansaruddin in Mali is still volatile. Every day we hear about Boko Haram operations, including yesterday, and the situation in Mali has stabilized relatively. There was this French operation that has started in the beginning of July to stabilize a little bit the situation, but still these elements are still there. So the fight against terrorism is not exclusively in the Levant, but it is also important to know that it is in Africa, and it is important that we do not neglect this part of the world, because it is very crucial. And if we do leave it like this, we will not be achieving anything much. Well, finally, maybe I should say a few words about the relations with Japan and the Japanese media. I know many of the media representatives of here, so at least I wish to express my assessment of how the Japanese media was dealing with Egypt recently. So Japan has always been an important partner for Egypt in development, also at the political level. And since the revolution of June of last year, the relations of cooperation came to a halt, so to say, but then they have resumed normally in the recent month. So this is something that we appreciate very much. And last Friday, the travel advisory to Egypt was lifted, and tourists from Japan can resume their visits to my country, which is something that we welcome very much. Now, regarding the media, I will not want to say something about the Japanese media as if it's different from the mainstream media. More or less, it's all similar. There was, as I mentioned, the desire to see the so-called moderate Islamists in power. So these people failed, and there is no wish to recognize that it was a failure, it was not a good decision, it was wrong to support these people come to power. So retracting back is not easy. And as a result, you find that the media is not interested in finding out and reporting the truth. And I would also say that in our part of the world, Western media has lost a lot of its credibility as independent sources of information. And as we mentioned the word mainstream, it means whatever the big guys say, everybody has to follow, and every individual has to believe what is said by the mainstream. So my country has been subjected to bias attacks continued. I would say up to 95% of the coverage in Japan was anti-Egypt, to the point that not only it affected the interests of my country here in Japan, but also it affected Japanese interest in Egypt, because Japanese business community, Japanese investors, when they see Molotov bottles and burning tires every evening in the, or whenever Egypt is mentioned in the news, I don't think they would venture and go there. While this is use of old footage, use of or lifting from Al Jazeera channel, which has a very specific role to play in this regard. So my message, and the same message that my Prime Minister yesterday, when we had a meeting with the board of the Egypt-Japan University for Science and Technology, delivered, is that please come to Egypt and report what you see to the media of Japan. So to conclude, I hope I'm not ahead of time. To conclude, I'd like to say three things. First, we have achieved stability in the country. Life is back to normal, which is a very important element. And number two, we have launched a very giant development program, which includes a second Suez Canal parallel to the one that exists, so that the passing of the canal will be reduced when the canal is finished, is operational. It will be reduced from 11 to 5 hours, the crossing of boats in the... and of course, this mega project generates a lot of other projects next to it, which can generate or can create jobs for the young people in Egypt. Finally, and this is a very important issue, again, I would say, we are fighting terrorism alone. We have been deprived from essential material that we needed, not only to fight terrorism, but also to protect our men that are fighting terrorism in the Sinai mainly. We have been deprived from this. We have not been given any help. We hope that this situation will change, because as everybody knows, terrorism is not far from home. It is perhaps at the doorstep if everyone looks around and see what is really happening. So I thank you very much, and I would be happy to take your questions. Thank you. Now, regarding the Al Jazeera correspondence, it is clear that the Al Jazeera itself had no license to operate in Egypt. that the three journalists came to the country. They are foreigners, the three of them. They said that they were
No, two of them are Egyptians.
Egyptian Canadian.
And Egyptian.
But they came to Egypt as business people. This is what they wrote in their visa application. And then, as you know, Al Jazeera, from day one, from the very, very, very beginning of the so-called Arab Spring, has been working against the establishment in Egypt, no matter what it was. So you know very well, like everybody knows very well, that Al Jazeera is used for political purpose. It is not a free station. It is not a station that that has any credibility anymore. So this regards the station. As for the three people, well, they have the court will have the final word regarding their imprisonment. But let me tell you that the Australian bureau chief admitted that they were operating without license, and he said that he thought that the station was working on his permit. So this is regarding the first question. Now, the second one regarding Hamas, yes, Egypt has not declared it as a terrorist organization, precisely for what you mentioned, that they are resisting Israel. And we cannot say that the resisting of the occupation is a terror attack or a terror act. So we did not consider, and we will not consider Hamas as a terrorist organization as such. However, we do have problems with Hamas. We do have problems with them because first of all, they are not in agreement. Their military wing is not I would say, working in tandem with their political wing. Their political wing, you know, the leadership is in Doha, in Qatar, and has been receiving instructions from Qatar not to agree to anything regarding the truce. And the truce was delayed for at least 2 weeks because of this. So finally, you were asking whether Egypt has a certain leverage, and I can tell you the result is clear, that if they had any other partner to reach this truth, they would have gone there. They had Turkey and Qatar offering their mediation, but it did not work because Israel trusts Egypt, just like the Palestinian factions trust Egypt. And the delegation of Palestine was composed of 5 factions. In fact, you have the Palestinian Authority, you have the Islamic Jihad, you have the Revolutionary Front, you have the Hamas, and you have, I forgot the 5th one, but they were 5 components of the delegation. So all Palestinians agreed to the truce. And hopefully when we resume the negotiations, we will reach better results in the near future. Regarding Libya, well, there is a group of countries, the neighboring countries of Libya. We have formed a group with Algeria, Egypt, Mali, Tunisia, and Chad, and we are trying to make it or solve it as a problem of the as an African problem. You will have noticed that the first visit of President Sisi outside Egypt was to Algeria, precisely to discuss with President Bouteflika the situation in Libya. We are all 5 countries on the same boat. The proliferation of weapons is immense. It is so huge. In every corner of Libya, there are weapons that are being smuggled, and we are doing our best, working with the international community. Now, the permanent members of the Security Council were of the view that there should be a resolution regarding the situation in Libya, and what we are saying is let's wait until we adopt a resolution that is workable. Let's see how the situation develops. There is no need now to have a resolution that would consider this party as legal or the other one as illegal, etc., when we still don't know what is the final balance of power there. But we are working with the neighboring countries on that issue. Now, regarding the end of Sykes-Picot, well, it's it's an expression used in the media to say that the demarcation of borders between Syria and Iraq and Jordan are no longer valid, and that since the Daesh are moving from across the border, then that means that Sykes-Picot is gone. It's just a way of expressing the chaotic situation that we are facing. But let me stress on this: it is wrong that states use non-state actors to achieve political goals. The non-state actors are uncontrollable. Even the paymaster cannot continue to control them. And this is what we are seeing with the IS or the Islamic State. They are non-state actors. You don't know what their end goal is. You don't know what they intend to do. You don't know when these young people return to their own countries what they will do. It is, or whether if they are crushed in Iraq and Syria, maybe they would go to another country, not necessarily return to their back home. So this was a mistake, and I hope that it will not be tolerated in the future. Playing with non-state actors is the most dangerous thing that can be done. I hope I passed the audition. Well, as I mentioned, the mainstream media across the world is anti-Egypt. And the reason for that is that the decision makers at the highest level in the big powers were surprised and shocked of what happened in Egypt last June. For them, it was unexpected. They were very happy with the Muslim Brothers in power. They knew they were making a lot of mistakes. They were excluding anyone that was not a Muslim brother, but they were surprised when the people revolted. So, as a result, this is the pulse that is getting out of the, I would say, official offices or official ministries in different words, different places in the West in general, and this is reflected in the media coverage. Again, to give you a specific example, sometimes nothing happened in Egypt. Situation is very calm, but then one of the main broadcasters here would lift from Al Jazeera live with the voice of the guy speaking in Arabic with Japanese interpretation and just saying anything negative about Egypt for no reason. I mean, it's a calm day, it's a calm week, nothing really to report. But you know that, as I said, Al Jazeera has expanded too much its influence in the Western world and is affecting the, I would say, the authenticity of the coverage by the media in general. This is one thing. The other thing is that always when Egypt is mentioned, it's a collapsing economy, it's a country that is ruined, it's a country that is finished, it's nothing. But you go to Egypt, you see people are living normal lives. Life is back to normal, children go to school, and everything is more or less under control. You hear less and less of incidents that happen in Egypt, but still you read the paragraph, you read the way it is put, it is always put in a negative way. But I am sure that in the near future, someone will make a revision of that passive attitude. Thank you. Oh, definitely deny. Definitely. The Apaches are supposed to be used in Sinai in fighting the so-called Ansar Baitul Maqdis, the group that I mentioned in my presentation. And Libya, we are not going to deal with it in such way. Libya is these are brothers that we really care about. There is not going to be a repetition of what NATO did in 2011. I can confirm this. Well, thank you for the question. Well, definitely, Egypt and Syria, we are Arabs, and this wouldn't change. Perhaps the political configuration in each country is different, but we are Arabs, we will remain so. We belong to the same civilization. Pan-Arabism has always been a dream. It has been realized in the past when together we were in the very old, I would say, history, when together we were fighting the Crusaders, and then later on when we tried to unite, it did not work for some political reasons. But remember, in 1973, we went to war together. There was a joint commandment of the two armies. And as much as we can, we work together. Now, regarding terrorism, as I mentioned, terrorism has no nation. It is a cancer that is affecting all of our countries, no exception. And definitely, Syria now is suffering from terrorist groups, and we hope that they will be able to bring them under control sooner than rather than later. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. These are very difficult questions to answer. You are expecting Egypt to participate in solving the Syrian, Iraqi, Yemen, and Libyan crisis. Of course, we wish we could play that role, but for the time being, we are stabilizing our country and bringing all the parts of Egypt under the control of the state. And then later on, I'm sure we will be able to contribute to solving the problems of our neighbors, which are of big concern for us as well. Now, regarding Al-Qaeda, I do not know whether they became a state or they have just imposed themselves on some territories in between two Asian countries. This remains to be seen, because we do not know where the leadership of Al-Qaeda are staying. But now it is said that Al-Qaeda has become weaker compared to the Islamic State, which is better financed and better guided from the outside. So I hope I answered your question. I think that yes, the international community is getting to be aware now of the dangers of terrorism, because it has touched many countries. First, when it was localized in the Middle East, it was not as flashy for the news as when the other important members of the Security Council suffered from that. This is true. The resolution by the Security Council calls on all countries not to finance and not to support the IS, the Islamic State, in any way. But they do not need any support anymore, because they have their income generated from the selling of oil. And this is something that will have to be dealt with, since it is said that every day they can collect around $2 million. So this has to stop. And it is known where they sell this oil, and the countries that buy the oil are supposed not to do that. As for the logistics, they received a lot of help even before they started moving in Syria and in Iraq recently. Then, unfortunately, we have the problem of Ukraine, which is also first of all was unnecessary. You ask any Ukrainian citizen, he will tell you, I wish that the clock had stopped in January of this year, and that what happened in February did not take place. I'm sure that any, whether from the pro-Russians or the pro-Kiev or the government or anyone, is not happy about what happened in his country, seeing the country in that state, and nobody knows how it will end. But again, this affects the international efforts, the international community in dealing properly, in focusing on terrorism before it gets too late. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for mentioning the Suez Canal project. Well, the project existed for maybe the past 15 years or so. But when President Sisi came, he said that if we manage to make the new canal and the projects that especially the industrialized zones around the Suez Canal, this will generate a lot of investment and a lot of job creation. So the project is not that new. It is only been implemented since the 6th of August. So that's 1 month past. I do not know what your company has submitted exactly, but I know that there are so many projects involved with the making of the new canal itself. So around the Suez Canal, there will be many projects. So maybe we can talk about this bilaterally. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, the international community is planning to hold a conference in Cairo on the reconstruction of Gaza and Palestine precisely under the auspices of Egypt and Norway. And we are hopeful that this conference will take place in October, by the end of next month, when the foreign ministers finish their meetings at the General Assembly of the United Nations.